to nip the problems of integration of foreigners in the country in the bud, and as a result, the crime emerging in the growing ghettoization that many cities in the country have suffered, Sweden has been implementing clear anti-immigration measures, as you well know, has until very recently been one of the most flexible with the arrival of immigrants from all over the world. In fact, take a look at this graph. During the wave of refugees that swept through Europe in the middle...
They let the most people in, and it had the most unsecure borders, and they have the most crime and terrorism in their country, and now they have two societies, almost two countries within one country. And their crime is skyrocketed the most. But no correlation here. No correlation here.
Middle of the last decade, Sweden opened wide its doors to hundreds of thousands of people who arrived in just a few years.
Keep in mind, they have 10 million people in the entire state, okay? And their numbers, they lie, just like in the United States. They ain't counting everybody, that's for damn sure.
The beginning of this century, a whopping 2 million foreigners have arrived in the country. As a result, 20% of the country's current population was not born in Sweden.
Do you hear that? 20% of the country wasn't even born in Sweden. It's literally, they're setting up another society. And what happens when both societies are the same size? What happens then?
In 2015 alone, Sweden added 160,000 refugees from countries such as Syria, Afghanistan, and Somalia. Well, the fact is that since that total open-door policy and that wave of migration, by chance or by consequence, the problems of delinquency and crime have only worsened. And now, the Conservative government of Ulf Kristersson wants to try to reverse that situation. How does he hope to do it? Well, take a look at this bill. Sweden's...
Hey, I want you to realize that, the United States, there was already 10 million illegal aliens in the country. Biden just let in 20. That's 30 million people. That's literally 10% of the United States. There's 300 million people, or 330 million people, or whatever, right? 10% of that is 30 million, right? If 300 million is whatever. Yeah, there's 30 million right now in the United States. 10% of the population in the United States are illegal aliens. And they want 100, according to their sites and what they say on TV, they want 100 million people to come to this country when there's only 300 million citizens.
Snitch law proposal faces backlash from public sector workers. The so-called whistleblower or snitch law is one of the measures that were included in the government agreement between the Moderate Party and the Sweden Democrats when forming a government in 2022. The idea is to force about 1 million workers, mostly public workers such as doctors and teachers, to report any contact with undocumented patients or students. In this way, the Swedish government intends to increase the number of expulsion orders for people who are illegally living in the country. The fact is that if it were to be approved, thousands of illegal immigrants would have to be denounced by public sector workers. Of course, as you can imagine, this has caused quite a stir, as many of these workers refuse to participate in these snitches or tip-offs.
They should be arrested and charged with treason at this point, okay? Because this is an invasion into this country, okay? These people should be charged with treason and locked up in prison. They can go to hospitals and get help. No one's saying that you shouldn't help them. They're just saying if you help them, then you are breaking the law, okay? But for humanitarian reasons, we can't deny them medical service or this or that, you know what I mean? So we want to give them medical service. But the doctor has to call and tell us, say, hey, this illegal alien came in, man, to get stitched up or whatever. That way, you aren't breaking the law now. You're not a traitor, okay? But if you don't want to tell on these people, you're a traitor at this point, okay? A bank robber who kills people is not as bad as this illegal invasion, because we're talking about millions of people. 20% of their country is taken over now. 20% by third world country people that are nut jobs, most of them. I grew up in a first world country, and I'm a nut job. If I grew up in a third world country, oh, you would not want me in this country. That's for damn sure. Because I would come here and bring my third world ways with me, and all my third world hate, and all my third world mental problems for having to live. Because what do you think happens when you live in a third world country? Even if you're a good person and you just see people being murdered and starving and all this other stuff, it degrades the mind.
The risk is that many illegal immigrants will decide to stop going to the doctor or stop sending their children to school, which could...
That's like me saying, well, I'm a bank robber, so, you know, I should be able to go to the hospital after I rob a bank and no one tell on me because, you know, it's not fair. I mean, you know, that's so stupid. Like, you you can always just not break the law and break into the country, right? Then you don't have to worry about going to the hospital or whatever. But no one's saying deny them service. They can go and get the service, just like a bank robber who's wanted for bank robbing. He can go out and he gets shot during the robbery. He can go to the hospital. But then he has to do his consequences. He broke the law, just like these illegal aliens. If you broke the law, well then you deserve to be, you know, whatever, told on or whatever.
Which could further increase the problem of exclusion if they still decide to stay living in the country, which is the most likely scenario. Nevertheless, this isn't the only thing Sweden wants to do to try to tackle its huge integration and security problems. The Swedish government also announced a few weeks ago that it will pay up to $34,000 to legal immigrants to voluntarily leave the country, starting in 2026.
Can you believe this? All they do, and that's how you know that they want the illegals to come, because they keep just giving them stuff and giving them stuff and giving them stuff, giving them stuff. Do you hear this? I want to go to Sweden now. If they're going to give me $30,000 to leave, my suggestion to everyone in America, everyone in the world, should go to Sweden. Just do it legally. Get an airplane. Get you know, whatever it is. You know, it might cost you a couple thousand or whatever, and then a couple thousand while you're there to live on. But they're going to give you $30,000 to leave. So after you have your vacation, right, they'll pay you what you spent. You know, say it took you $5,000 to get there and live there for a while until they deported you. They'll give you $5,000 back and another $25,000 on top of $30,000. You know, and if you're an illegal alien, you can go to Sweden. I think all you illegals should go to Sweden, because if it doesn't work out, right, you can grab for that brass ring or gold ring or whatever, and if you fail, don't worry about it. They'll give you $30,000 to leave. So you have a safety net now. Okay, before they were giving out the $30,000, they had no safety net. They have to gamble, a giant gamble, that they can get to this country and succeed. Now there's no gamble. No gamble at all. There's no risk at all going to Sweden anyone. So if you're in a third world country, run to Sweden. There's no risk at all. It doesn't matter if you fail or succeed, because if you fail, you still succeed, because they're going to give you $30,000.
This massive foreign departure subsidy program already existed, but what has just been announced means that Sweden will become the European country that will pay the most for programs like this by far. In this way, the government believes that hundreds of thousands of long-term unemployed or very low-income immigrants could choose to take the money, pack their bags, and leave the country. I repeat, we're talking about $34,000. But keep in mind, many say the Swedish state would actually save a fortune in subsidies and government assistance to people who are contributing little or nothing to its elephantine welfare state. All these are incredible steps in the opposite direction to what Sweden has been doing for decades. But what if I told you that the country that brought us ABBA is nothing more than an amateur? Yeah. Because in the closing of its doors to migration, there is one country that stands out in particular, and not only at the Nordic level, but at the European level. We are, of course, talking about Denmark. We already told you in a past video how Denmark has become an anti-immigration stronghold, even though it's been governed by the Social Democrats for years. Yeah,
that's why they're changing. The whole world is changing, because these nutjob deep state people, the Democrats and the whatevers, they want these open borders. They're crazy. They're insane. They want to destroy everything so that they can put a new monetary system, a global monetary system, one that's computerized, so they can just have this, flip a switch and turn off all your access to any money to buy a cab, to get a cab ride, or pay for rent, or get a job. Yeah.
Anti-immigration policies are basically a gigantic political consensus, and as we've already told you, the Danes have taken measures that some of you may find crazy.
Yeah, that's because they have open borders long before we did. It started over there. They're the start of it. You know what I mean? Yeah, and then it comes over more and more to the east. To the west. More and more to the west. More and more to the west till it hits the United States. So yeah, if we didn't have Trump, this is what our world would be like.
Denmark targets zero net migration as tough border policies see asylum numbers cut in half.
We're talking about the toughest immigration and asylum laws in all of Europe. In fact, for several years now, with the exception of Ukrainians, the country has not accepted a single refugee arriving on their own. Only those arriving through UN agencies are accepted. What's more, we mentioned the Swedish snitch law before. Denmark also has another one of its own, the jewellery law. According to this law, asylum seekers arriving in the country have to hand over their personal valuables, such as jewellery and gold, to the Danish authorities. They're only allowed to keep the ones with the highest sentimental value, but that's as far as it goes. The reason? Well, on paper, the Danish government says that this is a way to pay for the costs of their being in the country, but in reality, they're pursuing something quite different. Denmark's harsh laws are primarily intended to discourage immigrants and refugees from choosing.
They're not harsh laws. They're just harsh compared to no laws at all, which is what all of Europe has had for 2 years or whatever. And now it's been like 5-10 years. With open borders, or 6 years, however long they've been doing it. You know what I mean? We've had open borders for 4 years. So that means they have had it for 6. Yeah.
Choosing to settle in their country. After all, there are plenty of others in Europe with friendlier conditions for immigrants, so why on earth go to Denmark? But that's not all. To prevent the creation of parallel societies where crime is rampant, as in Sweden, the Danes have started to tear down public housing, or to sell it to investors to renovate and sell at market prices.
Yeah, they set up parallel societies because they don't speak English. So it's easier to... And then when their society... What happens when their society gets as big as the Sweden society? What happens at that point? Who's in charge?
The idea is to eliminate...
And these parallel countries within countries like this, Sweden, right? They are creating third world... their subculture is a third world subculture. Who's going to win? The tough people from the third world who've struggled their entire lives, or these people that are so privileged in Sweden that they open their borders up for murders and rapists? That's how weak they are. Who's going to win when it's 50-50 ratio of the population? They're already 20-80 right now. Who's going to win? The tough people from the third world, or the wussy people from the first world?
Public housing in neighbourhoods where more than 40% of the total supply is public, and where a number of other conditions are met, including more than 50% non-Western population. For the moment, these measures seem to be working, and although 2024 is proving to be a dark year for crime in the country, let's not forget one thing. Those who are operating in Denmark are mostly young people of Swedish nationality and Arab origin who live in Sweden, and who, as we said before, cross the border to commit crimes for hire. The problem then is...
Yeah, so when he's saying Sweden national, they're not Swedish. They're illegal aliens that came over through the border.
It's not so much those in Denmark who are settled, but those exported by Sweden. And that's why, as we've told you in this video, the governments of the countries around Sweden are demanding much tougher measures to control the problem they have at home. After all, it's no longer just a Swedish problem, but, as we say, it's becoming a headache for the surrounding countries.
See, they blame it on Sweden, but it's not Sweden's problem. It's everyone's problem because everyone has open borders in Europe, okay? They're just blaming it on Sweden so they don't have to close their borders completely. They can pretend. They can put in these BS laws that he's talking about that ain't going to do jack, okay? They're still getting millions of people, illegals, coming to their country, okay? Because they're going to pretend that it's Sweden. It's not Sweden. If it was Sweden, how could it be Sweden? If you have closed borders, then how can anyone from Sweden come into your house? It doesn't make no sense. But Humans don't care about sense. They love doublespeak. Close the damn border. That's how you stop the problem, and deport all these illegal aliens. Stop letting them take over and invade your freaking country,